Hey y'all, thanks for tuning into the Peace Podcast. This episode is just give me understanding of my protector parts, whatever that looks like. And so something that I have been taking inventory of is the amount of misunderstanding of the reasons why we do the things we do. And there are a plethora of things that we do as a trauma response that we don't even realize are trauma responses. And the reasons that we don't realize that they're trauma responses are that they're things that we've always done. So it doesn't come across to us as odd or maybe even traumatic to other people or triggering to other people. So because we have always done it and it's what we've always known, it's not until we get in other scenarios with other people that we start to realize the error of our ways and that some things that we're doing aren't necessarily permissible or even parts of what could create a harmonious relationship with other people. And you know, I've done this, I know people who've done this, and oftentimes the reality is that you don't start to uncover and unearth those things that are the toxic traits that you have until you get into a space where the person that you're with or the people that you're surrounding yourself with are actually healthy. And that healthy relationship starts to, one, unearth all those pieces of you that you didn't get to bring out in the other relationship, or that you weren't safe enough to be that vulnerable with in the other relationship. And two, it puts a spotlight on you that has in previous relationships been on the other person because of their inability to be regulated, they're blaming and shaming you for the way that they feel about things, etc. And so you weren't actually able to focus on the things that are happening inside of you. So there are some common protector pieces that are a result of our childhood wounds. But first, I think it's important for us to take it back and understand that this is science. These things have been studied. Psychology has internal family systems, and that is basically, in a nutshell, all of the studies they've done, all of the information that they have to be able to diagnose people, understand why people do the things they do, etc. So if we're looking at that entire methodology and just study as a whole, what we'll start to understand is that we have this inner part of us that wants to protect us. Whether the thing that we're doing is good, bad, or indifferent, our brain and our body want to do the thing that will protect us. And because of that, it's trying to shield us from any emotional pain, any trauma that we're going to experience. And the way that we've been able to make that happen when we were children is the way that we tend to continue to exist as adults. So if you were the type of person who knew that the quieter you were, the less crazy your entire family situation was, then you would have developed the tendency to silence yourself. And if you've developed a tendency to silence yourself, then even now when you have really good ideas, or when you know you have something to add to the conversation, it sometimes is really hard for you to add those things to the conversation because you're so used to being the more acceptable version of you, the more quiet you are. And there are spaces that you're in now that require your voice in them. And so sometimes it makes it really difficult for you to pull that out of you because you've been so accustomed to remaining silent. And so there are two ways that we tend to protect ourselves internally. One of those is the protector part of us, and the other is the exile part of us. We're going to be talking about exile later, but when we're thinking about the protector version of us, there are really two specific kinds of protectors. We either have the firefighters or we have the managers. Now, the firefighters are going to be those protector parts of us that are reactive. So those are the quick fixes. Those are the things like addiction or drinking or hurrying up and exercising really quickly to get those endorphins going. And some of those things may seemingly look healthy, like running or exercising to clear your mind, etc. But it is a firefighter response. It is needing to react to the feeling of not being safe by doing something really quick to get rid of it. Then there's the other protector version of us that is the manager part. And this is going to be the part of you that is super proactive, super hypervigilant, head always on a swivel, because you want to be prepared and ready for what may potentially come. Anxiety sometimes is a byproduct of having a heightened protector part that is the manager. It is being so hyper vigilant that you map out every possible outcome that you can think of, and then fear starts to build because of that, because you want to have a plan of action for anything that's going to happen. What we see, if we don't know the internal family systems, messaging, and science behind all of this, what we see coming out in ourselves and the people around us are things like the pleaser. The pleaser seemingly looks like somebody who is super kind and super easygoing and is a go with the flow type of person. But that is a protector part that is trying so hard to avoid rejection. Maybe in your childhood, you were rejected by your family system. Maybe you were the outcast. Maybe you were the black sheep. Maybe you always felt like you didn't belong. So because of that, internally, your body no longer wants you to have to feel those feelings. So in an effort to make that happen then, and remnants of that still exists now, say, if I can please everyone around me, then I can avoid rejection. But what actually is happening is you're manipulating people and situations because you don't want them to reject you. And also, you're surrounded by people, places, and spaces that aren't really yours because you're so intently focused on not being rejected that you aren't focused on being accepted for who you are. And so if you walk into spaces and your only goal is to please the room so that they don't dislike you, think you're stupid, want you to leave, etc., then you're going to do whatever it takes, even if it means shape-shifting and being a chameleon based on what table you're sitting at. And because you're doing that, the only focus area that you have is to not be rejected. So you're not even being your full and authentic self because you're trying to protect yourself from that rejection. But healthy people walk into rooms 100% who they are, and they aren't looking for the lack of rejection. They're looking for the spaces, places, and people who accept them for exactly who they are, who don't expect them to shapeshift, change, or be something different. And so if you have that tendency to please people around you, to do so much for them that you abandon yourself, that is a protector part that you have developed as a result of some sort of trauma where that thing kept you safe. Another one that you may recognize is the controller. Now, this person may seemingly also have it all together. This person has a schedule. They know where everyone is. They know when everything's happening. They like to take on all the tasks. They're oftentimes the leaders in the room. But controlling is also a protective mechanism. It says, when I was small, I chose the things that I could control and I sat with them because whatever was happening around me externally was so far out of my control that I could not bring myself to be in those spaces. It was chaos out here, so whatever was mine, this tiny little world that I had, I controlled every piece of it. And now as an adult, I need to control everything, even something like the way the dishwasher is loaded and the way people are acting and the way people are connected to me or making me look, etc. Because these are the things that are mine now. And though that has broadened from what it used to be, maybe back then it was my small bedroom and what I ate and who I talk to. And now it's broadened to this family system where it's the kids that I have and our schedule and where we go and what we're going to do. But regardless of how much that has broadened, I still need to control it, because the more control I have over it, the safer I feel in that space. That is protecting you from the chaos that you think exists outside of the realm of your control. So if you feel the need to control everything and you won't even venture into the things that are not in your control, then that should be a signal to you that you are using control as a means to protect you and to create a safety that didn't exist for you as a child. And side note, a lot of disordered eating and things that you'll see in that area, even like plastic surgery and those type of things, a lot of that comes from the control protector part. If I can control what I eat, then I feel safe because I feel like I have control over something. And so a lot of times when people see someone who is suffering from anorexia or bulimia or one of the eating disorders that exist out there, they will say, well, that person doesn't necessarily look like they have an eating disorder, but it's not about the physical appearance. It's about the disordered thinking that leads to the disordered eating. And all of that is an avenue to protect yourself and to create safety inside of yourself through control. Another one that we might see often is Judgy McJudgerson or the Critic. It is someone who constantly has to criticize themselves, other people, situations, scenarios, because they feel as if the judgment that they place on the thing is as heightened as it is, then any judgment that comes from other people will be minimum compared to the judgment that has already been given. It's a method to keep them in line. And this one is a little bit different because the narrative has been created by someone in this person's past who was a harsh critic, who continued to say, oh, that's a great homecoming dress, but I don't really like that color. Or, oh, well, you did really, really good on this assignment, but I really want to see an A+ next time, and they got an A-. It's the person who consistently is telling somebody something about their body or the way that they look or the way that they're producing, or they didn't do something quite right, so they have to point it out. It's a constant nagging of critique. If that person was in your childhood, the narrative that you've built in your head very closely matches the narrative that was spoken to you as a child. And so what happens is you become this inner critic. And when you become that inner critic, you don't just do it to yourself, you do it to everybody around you because you feel like it keeps you in line, but it also keeps people in line. And what that means is like it keeps you in line because you're following this semblance of perfection. And so you're going to try to remain perfect, but it keeps other people in line because one, it keeps them at distance from you to be able to critique you, which is you protecting yourself. But two, it keeps you in a manner of authority over them. Like you're going to constantly critique them because you have authority over the situation. You are better than them. So you can come from a place of judgment. Again, that comes from a place in your childhood, and it doesn't have to be the way that you are now. But if it is something that you notice about yourself or others around you, it is a way that they are utilizing their protector parts to keep them safe. And if somebody feels like the more in line they are, the more perfect that they are, the more accepted that they are, then they're going to keep that inner critic going so that it keeps them in a space where even if the people around them aren't loving to them, etc., at least they think that they're good at their job and they're a good mom and they're all these things because the inner critic has kept them in line so much that there's no way that anybody would perceive them differently. It's another safety mechanism to protect yourself. And then there's also people who avoid, right? So those people are the people that you see who are distancing themselves. They avoid the conflict altogether. They avoid conversations altogether. They avoid getting into relationship with people because it's easier than dealing with the pain that could happen as a result of it. The avoider is somebody who wants to numb the pain from the past, but not recreate it now. So if I just avoid any and all situations that could have a potential to turn out like my past situations have, then I can keep that pain at bay. And also the avoider is also a number, and so that type of person is going to be the type of person who maybe smokes or has some sort of habit that they keep because it helps them to release the pain. They also might be addicted to their phone and scrolling because that helps them to focus on something else and to avoid their situations. Though those protective mechanisms once kept us safe, they now have a way of sabotaging our relationships, our peace, and certainly our authenticity. The way that they sabotage relationships is, especially if you're in healthy ones, people start to notice those traits as toxic. If you're a people pleaser and you never bring anything to the forefront and nothing's ever wrong and you're always doing something for other people, eventually you're going to crash because you're doing so much for everybody else and no one's pouring into you, and then resentment develops, and that's going to show up in a relationship and it's going to become a problem. If you're a controller, the person that you're in relationship with, your children, people who are really close to you, are going to feel like you don't trust them to do anything. And that's going to develop some sort of conflict inside of a relationship. The critic, though inner to yourself, becomes outer and external to other people. When you're in relationship with people, just like that person was toxic to you who built your internal narrative, you become toxic to those people. And that affects relationship. And then the avoider doesn't have a true connection in those relationships because they're avoiding all potential possibility to be hurt. And so your own internal peace, in turn, can be affected by these protective mechanisms because when you are a people pleaser, you are self-sabotaging 100%, and you're not able to fully and authentically be you. When you're a controller, you're so hyper fixated on the things that you need to control that you're not even enjoying life. What you're trying to create as safety is also taking out fun and the ability to have joy inside of your situation. If you're the critic, that's going to steal your peace because everything's going to be filtered through the lens of criticism, and that's no fun. Nobody likes to be around somebody who's a nagging Nancy all the time. Sorry if your name is Nancy. I'm not talking negatively about you. And if you're an avoider, it's going to steal your peace because you're going to start to feel lonely. You're going to start to feel like there isn't a connection between you and everybody else. And all of these things affect your authenticity because if you show up as a pleaser, you're not showing up as yourself. There's no authenticity inside of that. You're actually self-avoiding to be able to show up as a pleaser. If you're a controlling person, that obviously is going to steal your authenticity because you're not even operating as your full self. You're operating inside of the need to control to create safety. If you're a critic, again, you can't be authentic because you're constantly filtering everything through the lens of criticism and you're not able to fully show up as yourself. And then if you're an avoider, you're not able to even show the people around you who you are. And so there's no need to even be authentic because the only person that you allow in is yourself. And so there was a time, and I've shared about relationship with you over and over and over again, but my strong protector part has always been people pleasing. And I learned as a child that when there is turmoil around you, that all you have to do is make a joke or, be in close proximity and, give somebody a hug or this type of thing. And all of that will create some sort of peace inside of that situation. Some people call the people pleaser, the peacemakers, the same thing. But what I started to realize is there was never a point even when I started to grow into teenage years is really when I really started to see this. But there was never a point where I actually felt like I was doing anything for me. Like it was, I'm going to get these good grades because someone else wants me to get those good grades. I'm going to, do this, whatever this other thing is, like be on the track team because I feel like someone else is going to be proud of me. I'm going to create peace inside the household because someone else might benefit from that peace. And also inside of my family system, I felt a little bit like the outcast, not a little bit, a lot of it like the outcast. And so it was like, I'm trying to please these people while I also feel like I don't belong. So it was twofold. I want to belong. So my pleasing is an effort to manipulate the situation so everybody in it will like me. And then once my parents got divorced, that's when I started to realize that people pleasing does not work. Because in order to please this one, I had to disappoint the other one. And in order to please this one, I had to disappoint the other one. And so there was no way for me to fully avoid rejection and fully keep the peace because I had two things that were at odds that I was still trying to 100% people please. And so did it protect me? Maybe in the short term. But in the long term, what it did for me was created a situation where I was self-abandoning more than I was giving myself grace. I was doing everything for everybody, and eventually I would get so tapped out that I would have weekends where I couldn't even leave my bed because I didn't want anybody to ask me to do anything, and I didn't want to be able or responsible for doing anything for anybody. And so I had to shut down completely. And then when I got into relationship with people who expected that, because that was the reason why they were with me in the first place, then what happened was I started to build up resentment for people not doing for me what I was doing for them. And so it doesn't work in the long run like you think that it would. And when you really truly think about it, of course it doesn't, because you built these strategies when you were a child. So those childlike strategies made sense when you were a child, but now that you know better, you have to do better. And so people pleasing may feel like it's going to protect you, but that's because you were 7 when you started doing it. And now it's time to say, I'm going to truly show up authentically 100% myself, and I don't care who does not benefit from it. And I'm not going to manipulate people into liking me only because I'm doing what I'm doing for them, but I'm going to accept the fact that rejection could exist, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to look at that as selection. God is picking the people who are for me and keeping them close, and he's sifting out the people who aren't for me and keeping them away from my close circle. And that is what I want. Controlling may have felt like it kept me safe when I was a child, but quite literally, having an eating disorder is a next level mental hell that I would not wish on my worst enemy. And so when I was a child, it made sense that I could control that small thing. But now the world is literally at the tips of my fingers, and so I can't control everything. So because I'm grown, I have to understand that I don't need to control everything because I'm not in control anyway. God is in control, but I don't need to control everything. I can let it be what it is and hold space for it to be that way and accept that what's for me is for me and what's not won't be, and be okay with that. Criticism may felt like it kept me safe as a child, but criticism doesn't keep me safe now, because if the voices in my head are telling me that I'm not good enough, then that's exactly how I'm going to walk in the world, and I don't have to have that record on repeat in my brain. And so now I have to tell myself, yeah, that's the critic again. We're not listening to that. That's not going to keep me in line, because I need to be authentically myself, not in this made up fantasy line. And avoiding situations when I was small may have kept me from being in spaces where there could have been people who were hurting me. But also as an adult, I crave connectivity. And so therefore, I don't want to be in that space of loneliness. So if I operate in a space that's authentically me, just like you can operate in a space that's authentically you, then you know how to pick the people who won't cause you that type of pain. So today I'm going to give you a call to action, because I believe that Knowing the information is one thing, but doing something with the information is something completely different. And that is what causes the healing. And there were a lot of things that I did to catapult me into a season of healing that I'm still in, because we never truly get to heal. There's always something that we're uncovering. But I want to share those things with you on a case-by-case basis, on a podcast-by-podcast basis, so that it gives you the opportunity to do steps that will actually get you to a place where you can be metacognitively looking at the way that you think and making adjustments. So this week, I encourage you to take out your journal, a piece of paper, the notes app in your phone, wherever you want to do this, and jot down what protector part shows up the most for you. Is it those managers or the firefighters? Is it people pleasing, controlling, critiquing, or avoiding? Which one shows up the most for you? And what is it that you're afraid will happen if you stop doing it? What was it protecting you from that you're afraid you're going to open up the floodgates for if you stop doing it now? Meet that little 7-year-old where she was when she drafted this plan, and see what it was that she felt like she was keeping herself safe from. I thank you guys for tuning in. I encourage you to do that as soon as you're finished listening to the pod, or set a timer to do it later. Remember that knowledge gained and kept to yourself is selfish, but knowledge shared with the world could just be the catalyst they need to change the thing that is keeping them in bondage and help them to live a life of freedom. So share this episode, like and subscribe to my pages, go to all my socials, follow me there, so that we can continue to be the voice of reason to those of us who are continuing to struggle with the things that have kept us in bondage for decades. I appreciate you for tuning in, and I will see you again next time.